After buying the early access of Don't Scream and a couple of patches later, I'm ready to give you a review, the pros and cons of Don't Scream. But I think this game proves one big thing still exists in horror, and that's something I'm going to touch on as well. If you like what I do, consider subscribing, and I want to hear from y'all after this video because one thing these developers are doing is taking our input in order to make a better game. So, we're going to talk about a lot here. Let's go ahead and get into it. Now, if you don't know, Don't Scream, the premise is very simple. You survive 18 minutes without screaming, you win. In reality, the game takes about 35 minutes roughly to finish, depending on how many times you stop, because if you stop, the timer stops. So you can't just wuss out and stand there for 18 minutes and call yourself the winner. You actually have to explore this world. Now, when we first got into the game, the very first day, it was a lot of walking and less exploring. Now, after a couple of patches, they've actually put in a lot more stuff into the game, or made it easier to find, I should say. There is a sign with directions on it when you first load in that will tell you whether you have the homestead, the mini mart, the airplane crash, the farm, and you basically just walk in that direction and start exploring. And one of the highlights of this game, in my opinion, is the atmosphere is absolutely creepy, man. And when you come across the house, it's got a serious PT vibe. You have soccer balls that just kind of get kicked up in your face randomly. You have, people pounding on the door. You have people pounding on the windows. You have cabinets that open randomly. And of course, monsters that jump out at you at almost the perfect timing.
Have you been up here?
See that. And sometimes they'll be stuck in the wall, but for the most part, the atmosphere in the house is really well done. Actually, I think it's one of the shining parts of this entire game. Because in the woods, while it's still really scary, traveling and exploring at night, there's still nothing that really compares to the confines of a creepy old house. Kind of a staple in horror, and it works really well in this game. The other thing that you have is the plane crash, and this one offers a pretty awesome jump scare. I'm trying not to give too much away here, but it offers a pretty good scare. There's also two World War II planes that we've come across. There's a dead astronaut. There's a piece of a NASA spaceship. There's also the mini mart. The mini mart is pretty interesting. I like this location as well. There's also vending machines everywhere. By the way, I have no idea why they're there in the middle of the woods. But the mini mart itself has bodies and a lot of pretty good scares. And one thing about this game that I'll go ahead and say is the scares are supposed to be randomly generated. This is one area they need to focus on heavily because I found that a number of times the same scares, the same locations happen quite a bit. And so this is something that's going to keep people playing because if you never know what's going to happen on each walkthrough, it's going to make you want to keep exploring this world. So the randomly generated scares, when you first play through it, maybe one or two times, really intense. And then you start to get used to it after just a couple of times. Now, the locations are cool. One thing I would love to see them add into the game, though, is some kind of lore, some backstory. Why are we here? They could honestly do it in a series of VHS tapes that are found throughout Pineview Forest or in different locations altogether. But if they do something like a fear footage type of scenario where you're looking through the eyes of what these people are seeing as they explore Pineview Forest, give us a reason that we're there. Who are we searching for? What are we searching for? I really think this will add just another layer to what is already a pretty decent horror experience. And while I think they nailed the tension and atmosphere, it would be really nice to know why are we here and what happened to where all these random things are just placed into the woods. And another element that I like about this game are the tape recorders. There's just not enough of them. If there was tape recorders, and let's say there's more, they're going to add more locations to the game inevitably, but they actually put some kind of secrets in the tape recorders. It doesn't have to be these, super involved puzzles that you have to solve, but just something that adds to the story, I think would be really beneficial here. So when you find those things, there's a reason you found it. There's just something more to it than just random sounds. That to me, I think would serve this game really well. Now, what about the monsters themselves? There are a variety of different ones in the game. Everything from spiders to your traditional ring light women that just kind of stand behind you and make creepy noises. All that stuff is fantastic, but instead of the more in your face jump scares, which do work and they're effective, I like the ones that are more subtle. So while Miss Techshot was playing, I was mentioning it would be really cool if at certain points you turned behind you and there was just this creepy demonic figure staring at you, smiling with bright yellow eyes or something, and then he disappears. If you have people inside of the house that are on the outside of the windows, maybe it starts raining all of a sudden. I know I'm looking for PT here. I'm still looking for that game to finally come back, but this does have elements of that. And so things like that, women on the outside of the windows staring at you just randomly, that kind of stuff is really effective. So better randomly generated scares, an actual story to go along with Pineview Forest, and a variety of different monsters and ghosts in this world will really help out. And one thing, I'll say it again, one thing that PT did really well is every walkthrough in that hallway, it was just a hallway, y'all, and it still has a lasting impression all these years later. But you had to do certain things in order to get to the next hallway, right? And so that kind of just simple but effective puzzle solving really helped to make that thing playable over and over and over. So a variety of different places to explore. I personally like the indoor places more. I just think they're scarier. They have a scarier vibe to them. And I really like that kind of stuff. And while there's some things they definitely need to improve on, to keep this in perspective, this is two guys that obviously have a deep love and understanding of what good horror is. And the biggest thing to take away from this video is 90s camcorder found footage style horror and just simple budget horror in general is still king, right? Sometimes simplicity in horror is the best thing. And these guys, I think, have nailed that aspect of it. Again, I'd love to hear your opinion of this game. What do you think they could do to make this better? And remember, they want to hear this feedback. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. Big thanks to you guys. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.